Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the North Andover School Committee for June 11th, 2020. The school committee just got out of executive session, and now we're back in regular session. As an announcement, this meeting is being recorded. I'm joined here at the main office by Superintendent Greg Gilligan and Assistant Superintendent Jim Mealy. On the line, we have the school committee members, and I'll introduce them in a second. First of all, as a preliminary matter, let me just go through some of the special things we have to talk about since we've gone remotely. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Amy Mabley.
Yes.
Andrew McDevitt. Andrew McDevitt. You're muted, Andrew.
Muted, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm here.
No worries. Where was I? Helen Picard.
Yes.
Holly Lynch.
Yes.
Okay, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy are both here. On the line, Lorene Marks.
Yes.
Marcy Bacuzzi.
Yes.
Did I see Chet Jackson?
Yes.
I think Rick Gallant from Community Programs. Are you there too?
Yes, good.
And who else? Is Cheryl Barzak? You there?
Yes.
Okay.
Chris Carroll.
Yes.
Is that it? Did I miss anybody? Fantastic. So thank you. Okay. Okay, so this open meeting of the North Andover School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the North Andover School Committee is convening by video conference. This is Google Hangout, I think so, as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by this meeting. Okay, meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line to members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Okay, items for public comment. I will read the public comments that have been sent to me as of 5 o'clock today. Okay, and finally, I'm sorry, each vote taken tonight will be conducted by a full roll call. So thank you. I apologize for that. And one thing I forgot to do, I wasn't on my agenda. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I apologize for skipping that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So everyone, thank you for bearing with me on that. As I said, I will go to the public comment first. We have 5 public comments. The first one is from Bill Callahan. Good afternoon, Chair Teresi. I appreciate your steady leadership of the committee through this crisis. I appreciate the fluid and unpredictable landscape of education in a post-COVID environment. We are in uncharted waters as a community and need to make sure that resources are available for our student body while revenues may not conform to prior forecasts. I have a few questions for the public comment section of the next school committee meeting, which is now. 1, isn't it true that once the school budget is approved by town meeting, there are no further restrictions on how those funds are expended during the fiscal year? School spending is under the purview of the superintendent after town meeting budget approval, and no town official or body outside of the North Andover Public Schools could reduce or reallocate those funds. That is correct, though. 2, will free school lunch continue to be provided to eligible families over the summer? 3, given the current climate of uncertainty, why wouldn't North Andover Public Schools agree that all appointments for the 2021 school year be one-year contracts? There could be exceptions for administrators who are not covered by collective bargaining agreements and therefore need the protections that are afforded in a longer contract. Thank you. Greg, can you just quickly answer his second question? Will free lunch?
Yeah, school lunch, we just got approved to run school lunch all summer.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the next comment I have here someplace. I apologize here. Okay, let me see here. John and Sally Finnemore, we are writing the High Street. We are writing to thank the members of the school committee along with Principal Jackson and Superintendent Gilligan. As parents of a 2020 graduate, we were very happy with the end of the year celebration for our seniors. We understand that the times we are in are certainly unusual and that decisions were difficult, but we felt that you all kept the best interests of the students and families at the top of the priority list. The activities and ceremonies that were set up honored the students while keeping safety in mind. While graduation looked different, our son never felt like he missed out on feeling special or remembered. We thank you for your careful planning and attention to details, as well as your compassion and understanding. While we hope the July events will take place, we understand that some decisions are beyond your control. We will always have special memories of the personal graduation and the car parade and applaud your efforts and planning. Kind regards, John and Sally Finnemore. So thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay. Next comes from Tom Duggan, Beacon Hill Boulevard. I'm submitting comments to both committees, the Finance Committee and the North Andover School Committee. Item number 1, it is my experience that the women and men of the North Andover Police Department are honorable, fair, and compassionate. Chief Gray has made great strides in creating a professional department. However, my perspective is biased with the privilege inherent in being a white male. In light of last night's community gathering in support of Black Lives Matter and ending systemic racism, an addendum must be added to the town meeting budget documents that details how FY21 funding is linked to policies on training, community policing, student resource officers, and other emerging best practices on the issues of bias, race, and policing. Item number 2, I am asking both boards, the town manager and the superintendent, to more clearly define the term new initiatives included in the FY21 budget memorandum of understanding as endorsed by the Board of Selectmen. For example, additional resources for the Atkinson School is not a new initiative. It is a long-standing goal of the strategic plan adopted by the district. I believe more precise language and illustrative examples should be used to describe the types of services impacted by the agreement. Finally, copies of this document must be made available to the public at town meeting. The original document was included at the end of financial statements provided to the BOS, the Board of Selectmen. The current version was not hyperlinked within the Selectmen meeting agenda at which it was approved. Members of our community deserve the awareness and transparency of knowing what may occur should budgetary revenues not meet the benchmarks established in the proposed FY21 budget. I'm going to ad-lib a little part of this last one, Tom. I'm sorry. This one's a long one. Item number 3. The state is facing a $6 billion to $10 billion budget shortfall. Here is a chart showing the impact of local aid cuts to our budget, which indicates a 5% reduction in local aid, which is a $594,000 decrease in revenue. A 20% reduction in local aid is a $2.3 million reduction in revenue based on the values used in the town's draft of FY21. For those listening who are not well versed in municipal and state finance terms, our cherry sheet values represents the amount of the annual state budget recommended by the governor and ultimately appropriated by the legislature for schools and local services. By pointing this chart, no one has a crystal ball or a Harry Potter spell to tell the future about local aid numbers. Choices coming in the state budget, DESI regulations for school reopening, the length of our Commonwealth's economic recovery, or WHO guidelines on COVID. Levity aside, our town budget is the numerical representation of services, policy, and plans. Given the high probability of cut to local aid, potential weaknesses in federal programs that provide formula and discretionary grants to police, education, health services, and the entirely reasonable expectation that our needs in FY21 will exceed the budget approved at town meeting, we should effectively budget and plan the finite resources represented by the CARES Act, which could be capped at $2.7 million for FY20 and 21. At this time, I have found no public documents outlining how the $2.7 million in funding will be used in North Andover. I request that the school and municipal departments work together to create a memorandum of agreement on the use of CARES Act funds. Similar to the draft budget MOA, this document should communicate how funds will be prioritized towards new and existing services eligible for reimbursement, the relationship of CARES Act funding to changes in our revenues and level services for FY21. An MOA is a prudent planning and awareness tool that allows the community to collectively discuss priorities and trade-offs. Jim, while I found the next one, could you talk about the CARES Act and how that unfolds? Would you mind addressing that really quickly?
Which part?
Just the 2.7 that we could get reimbursed for, and how you're splitting that between FY20 and 21.
Okay, so any expenses directly related to COVID-19 or our response to COVID-19, planning, training, staffing, a bunch of different categories are eligible for reimbursement from March 13th to June 30th, so that's FY20, and then all through FY21. So any expenses that we have occurred this year, this fiscal year, we can put in for reimbursement from that $2.7 million. That will be a small number compared to what we expect FY21 to be, but as we enter into FY21, anything we need to do to adapt to or to account for COVID-19 and to manage through it, we can put in for reimbursement up to the $2.7 million minus whatever we get for FY20.
Thank you. Sure there'll be more discussion as that goes along. A couple more quick comments. This one's from Don Vargas. Hello, I am submitting for public comment to know if this can be done here in North Andover and discussed between the committee and the district ASAP. The committee received this email, and there's a clip about New York and what they're doing here. It looks like the governor of New York was presented an order submitted by an assemblyman that the state should begin planning for in-person summer services for special education students. So I think we'll be addressing that, Dawn, and maybe we can follow up with her directly, because I don't have a definitive answer and I can't show the video clip she was referring to in her public comment. Last one, folks. Thanks for bearing with me. Andrew Furman from 5 Crossbow Lane, North Andover. Will there be any response to the state regarding plans for the next school year beginning in the fall? I'm not sure if anything has been confirmed or what is being discussed in the news and on social media is just conjecture at this point, or if there is some reality to it. Has anything official been provided to the district yet? While I was on board with all the shutdowns and all the canceling school for the remainder of the current year, I'm also of the mindset that we must get our kids learning and back to something that resembles their past normal. Totally realistic that normal is going to be different. But we must balance health concerns as best we can. And it appears that the long-term social and emotional development is being put at great risk to meet the needs of another risk. Again, we need balance. While I have long been an advocate of reduced class size, a classroom of no more than 10 children is not realistically feasible. I'm not a fan of some of the crazy ideas I've heard. Half go in the morning, other half in the afternoon. Half go for 2 weeks, the other half for another 2 weeks. Half go for 2 months, the other half go for 2 months. I don't see how the first two reduces the potential exposure. If someone in the first group is infected, they'll just pass it on to the teacher who will pass it to the second group, so what's the point? On the third, many studies show that kids regress substantially over summer break. The same will hold true with the 2-month break. The general feeling I'm having is that the districts are waiting for guidance and then just accepting that guidance as gospel. While balancing health concerns with COVID-19 is a concern and should be addressed, so too should the long-term health concerns of social and emotional development of children and adolescents. And this is where the school board needs to stand up and advocate for our children. Not that I expect this committee to be able to greatly influence the decisions at the state level, but I also do not expect you to sit by idly either. Rather the opposite. Now more than ever, you must advocate for our children, their learning capability, and their social and emotional development. I hope these discussions are taking place within the school administration and at the school committee level, and a response as a district will be provided. With gratitude, Andy Furman. So I think Dr. Gillen will be discussing this later on the agenda pretty much, kind of the beginning part, so we'll wait.
Yeah, certainly, Chair Teresi, we can talk about reopening of school is under the superintendent's report.
Yep.
But if you entertain it, I think Marcy can answer that question about,
The other one?
from New York.
Oh, okay.
And before we do that, I would just say that the guidance that came out last week that made the splash across the headlines and on television was targeted for summer school,
Right.
And the operations for summer school. I think in a letter I sent, and it might have gone out after, there's a paragraph about the commissioner and DESE has clearly told us that they will get us fall guidance in a couple weeks, but we've been working now for many weeks on preparing for the fall. So.
Yeah, I think Mr. Furman's comments. First of all, Andrew, when you write again, please use a bigger font. I think it's like a 6 font you sent me, Andrew. Second of all, I think your concerns are well taken, and I think a lot of parents, including this parent, want answers as well. So did you say Marcy's going to answer Ms. Vargas's question?
Absolutely.
Okay, Marcy, I'm sorry.
Well, I can talk a little bit about what we know about where we're at as far as, I'm sorry, is that,
Yep.
can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so we received our most recent guidance on June 7th, and as of now, that is not final guidance, which they're telling us we can expect within the next week or two. So already we can see, some challenges with that. So our guidance received, which was different this time than the last piece of guidance that we received, included information regarding identifying what they're calling high priority students, and those students are students who are ones who really have not been able to access remote learning at all during this time, and those students with pretty significant special needs. So those are the students that they're targeting for in-person programming at some point over the summer. Now, I think very similar to what's happening in New York, that, sorry, of course, right? Any in-person that we do is going to be subject to all the things that we need: PPE, training of teachers, identifying of those students, identifying those teachers. Cheryl and I, as far as nursing, we've had some conversation, obviously already about needs, but the vast majority of students who have just traditional tutoring sessions, will continue that way, most likely virtually, unless we hear something differently, like I said, over the next few weeks. So we've definitely we've had plan A, B, C, and D, and we continue to evolve. I'll say the wonderful, again, one of the reasons, I can't say enough about teachers. A lot of places are struggling with getting teachers to even work. And we've surveyed our teachers as of most recently. We had something like 85, 90 teachers, TAs respond to summer programming and their availability. So that's pretty amazing too. So, when we get word and we have the right criteria, the right training, we'll be ready.
Thank you, Marcy.
Yep. I should say, and what I know of New York, I would say that they're the same thing. Like we want to get kids back, but it's really dependent on Department of Public Health issues, local issues, PPE issues. So all those things contribute to those decisions.
Yeah, we're used to a lot of unknowns, no question about it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving along down the agenda, we do not have a student report today. Is that correct? No student report? That's okay. Just want to say again, thanks to Jack for...
Wait, sorry, Chair Trissy, Eamon O'Carroll's trying to get the meeting information right now. I'm trying to send it to him, so
Okay,
he'll
we'll come
pop
back to
in
him.
shortly.
We can come back to him. Eamon's always welcome, just like Jack was always welcome. So we'll come back to the student report. Consent agenda. Approval of minutes. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as presented in the packet if there's one.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Helen, seconded by Holly, to approve the minutes from May 21st. Any discussion or edits? Hearing none. Helen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Holly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that's 5-0. Okay. Is Eamon there yet?
I'm trying to send him the
Okay,
link. Hold
that's
on,
all right.
please.
We'll get to him when he gets on, no worries. If there's no objection, I would like to take, because I know Cheryl's on the line and Cheryl has her team with her. Could we take the annual health report and I guess on a new business, it would be A, B, and C. Is that correct, Dr. Gillum? We're gonna take those three out of order? Is that all three things we're gonna take out of order?
You want to put the annual review up in the superintendent's report?
I thought we were gonna do the health stuff first.
That's fine.
Okay. So do you want to introduce Cheryl or Cheryl gonna introduce our team?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to introduce Cheryl. Cheryl, this is one, folks who are watching, this is one of my favorite presentations of the year. This is Cheryl Barzak, and I believe she has some of her team with her she'll introduce. And she, last year, was the Nurse Administrator of the Year for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and she's been working very closely with Central Office in helping plan for the future, but more importantly, she's going to report on what's been happening this year. So without further ado, Lead Nurse Administrator Cheryl Barzak.
Thank you, and I wish I had my team with me tonight. I was under the impression I was doing this by myself tonight, so they
That's
are
fine.
not on the line with me. I really wish we were all there together in the room, and hopefully next year that's how the presentation will be. If Jim could pull up the slides, that would be great.
All set.
So I can't see the slides.
The journey.
All right, so thank you for the opportunity to allow me to present tonight the overview of school nursing services in North Andover. So this year's pandemic has certainly taken us on a different journey with our students in the community and reinforced the fact that school nurses are public health nurses. So the slide that you're currently on now, I can see them, thank you. I've divided the journey into 3 phases. The beginning being the beginning of the year being business as usual. Slides and the information that I'll present are what you're used to seeing in this presentation. And then, of course, we had COVID. And then the third part of the journey will be our final plans on returning to school. You can have the next slide, please. So the health office visits until March 13th of this year were 32,570. It's about 4,500 more visits than March 13th of 2018. So or 2019. So we're on track to have many more health office visits. The return to class rate, we kept at 96%. That's always our goal, to return students back to class. We had 11,000 scheduled and as needed medications, about 2,000 more than we had at that time in 2019. And of course, parent communications is always a large number, as that's an important part of the school nursing role. Next slide. So most of the medical conditions that we report are very consistent year to year, except the 2 that I highlighted there in red. And the first one, allergies and EpiPens 356. I've been doing this presentation for a long time, and I look back to 2013, and that number was 268. And every year we continue to increase the number of EpiPens and allergies that we have in our schools. And the number of students with anxiety reported 607 this year, which is an additional 100 from last year. But back in 2013, that number was 103. So I know last year in our meeting, we talked about how there's less stigma now and more parents do report it. But as we return to school in a much different way this year, we will really need to be ready to support these students. Next slide, Jim. Thank you. So another important role of school nursing is our health screenings, 8,650 up until March, vision, hearing, postural screening, SBIRT, which is the substance misuse screening. We focused on one particular area, and that was the vision referrals this year. It was one of our specific practice goals, and we wanted to increase our return rate. So these are the students that fail the vision test, and we really know how important it is for students to be able to see in school. So we worked really hard calling parents, giving out vouchers to get glasses, trying to make appointments. And of course, COVID happened at the wrong time. So we did not reach our goal. We wanted 85%. But we also took the students that did fail vision, and with the help of Kristen Ando and Alicia Murray, we compared some data points with the students that failed. And you can see in those charts just two examples of how it's not surprising that vision could be a factor in some of the testing results and lower performance for our students. So eye practitioners did open this week. Hopefully we're going to get our students lined up with their appointments and continue to work on that. Next slide. So another project before March 13th was the Knight's Closet at the middle school. So Kathleen Pease and Deborah Foley spearheaded this, and they identified an important need for our students that needed clothes. The nursing office is often a place where students can get clothes for multiple reasons, and they had the support of the principal. They got a location in the middle school. They reached out to the community, tremendous support, and all of those clothes that you can see in these pictures really helped meet the needs of our students, keep them in school, increase their self-esteem. Some attendance was improved. There were over 100 students served. Guidance counselors and nurses and teachers could refer students. It's a private appointment. They could go in and basically shop for either brand new or very slightly used clothes that were current. And it was, great kudos to both of them for really getting it going in our community for supporting this project. And then the slides turn to red because COVID visited Massachusetts and we moved to remote learning. So nurses, along with guidance counselors, teachers, principals, of course, reached out to families to make sure everyone was connected. We all understand the importance of identifying students that are at risk. And nurses were certainly a familiar voice to the parents, and they could get and identify specific needs and link them up with resources that would be needed. And the next slide. The role of school nursing really pivoted for 4 school nurses, our middle school nurses and our high school nurses, Lauren McDonald, Maura Goudreau, Kathleen Pease, and Beth Hassanine. Were trained in the MAVEN system, and that's the Mass Virtual Epidemiological Network, and that tracks all communicable diseases. So those 4 nurses supported our public health nurse, Caroline Ibbotson, who is fabulous, in order to notify, this was all of the positive cases in North Andover. So there were 337 positive cases that these 4 nurses plus the public health nurse tracked. So every day cases came in, they divided them up. They're responsible for contacting each individual, educating them, teaching them about isolation, and then getting all of their contacts. And so then they had to contact all of those contacts, explain to them what quarantine means, and then follow up with, and then enter them into the system. So now that was more work, and then follow all of those people up for each case daily. And then it moved, as they got better, monitoring their symptoms, checking on them, helping them understand when to call the doctor, when to go to the hospital. The nurses were really a trusted resource for all of these people in our community. As you know, 35 people did die from the virus, and many were families that our nurses supported during this time. They really played a key role in our community to fight the control of transmission. The health department was grateful to have them, and they're continuing to do this now. Luckily, our cases are starting to go down, but it was a tremendous role for the school nurses to, they jumped right in and were so valuable. Another, like teachers, the school nurses also adapted to the remote learning model. These are some examples of what some of the elementary nurses presented and developed to meet the current needs of what was going on. The top left corner picture, that's Karen Duty, our kindergarten nurse, showing students some normalcy. She made a video of herself with PPE, all of the masks and gowns and gloves, and then, transformed to show that it's still her underneath all that, to help the kindergartners understand that this is what they're going to be seeing and it's okay and it's normal. So that was very well received. Kathy O'Neill is the picture there, dressed up as Kylo Ren. She is supporting a student in her neighborhood for a birthday celebration. She also lives in the neighborhood of where the school is. She delivered, what are they called? These sparkly tooth boxes to anyone that lost a tooth in that area. Again, having some normalcy for these elementary students that, the school nurse is still going to bring you a tooth box when you lose your tooth, even though, these times are very, very different. Next slide. So another important, back to that Maslow need, people need to have food. So here's Kathy in the first picture, not in her costume, helping out Erica Murphy's food program, which was fabulous. As you all know, there were over 3,500 meals delivered each week to families in North Andover. And Kathy had a dual role. One was to be the nurse there, because when this was brand new, everyone was afraid. The food workers, the volunteers that were handing out the food, and she was able to answer questions, show people how to wear masks, how to put gloves on, how to take them off, how to social distance or physical distance. And it was a good resource. If someone was sick at home, that they should probably go home as well. It was great to have her there, and Erica wants to keep her through the summer, so we're gonna hopefully make that all work out. Another thing she did on the phone there was reaching out to families. Many of the families, especially the ones on isolation and quarantine that couldn't drive to pick up food, needed it to be delivered to them. So the second picture, that's Julie Masacci, one of our part-time nurses, loading up her van with all of those meals to bring to these homes. And it also gave her the opportunity to check in on some of our at-risk families and make sure that things are okay and they don't have other needs. So that was one side of the food delivery system. And the other place, Kathleen Pease was delivering masks to the senior center, where she saw Deanna Lima's project. And Deanna Lima had a lot of food at the senior center. Again, our community donated so many items to that food bank. And Deanna was calling people and having people call her, and she was individually driving them places. So the two of them partnered up, and they developed the flyer on top there that they would have people come to the food bank on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Today it was 3 to 5. And they, of course, reached out to the community through the large social network of all the nurses, and the donations just poured in, not just food, but personal items, household items, just tremendous outpouring of support. The 5 nurses in that picture, Dana Woodford on the left, she also made an account with Amazon so that families could donate to Amazon directly, and Amazon shipped right to the senior center. And all of those boxes started coming in last week. Mary Palazzola's there, Maura Goudreau, Lauren McDonald, and of course, Kathleen Pease. And still back, Jim, sorry. There's also Friends of the North Andover library. I just have to also thank them. Parents, as they drove through the line, the nurses, were very comfortable asking what other needs they had, and they really needed some books for their children because all of the libraries were closed. So we reached out to the library, and sure enough, 6 cases of books were donated to that food bank. And so as people drove through, they could pick up food, toiletries, a lot of different items, and as well as books. And even today, Erica had some extra produce, so that was there. And so today they got fresh produce as well. So they've served about 800 people in the last couple of weeks. So that has really grown very, very quickly. And it just shows what a need we have in our community. And I'm so proud of the nurses that just stepped up and made this happen. So I also have to reach out to Laura McDonald. She received the Peace Prize Faculty Award. She was one of the 2 class advisors for this senior class. And I know a lot of you were involved with the graduation. It was so much work, and that's her and her daughter and the other class advisor in the car during the senior class parade. So I just had to shout out to Lauren for all the work that was involved with being the class advisor during this unique year. So congratulations to Lauren. In the last slide for COVID, as you all know, no one knew anything about COVID. And every day, the nurses, we continually read information, tried to understand what this virus was. We attended webinars. We talked to our school nurse colleagues throughout the country to really have a good understanding. And as you know, it changed a lot. But as we get ready for the next phase, we really try to keep up to date on all things related to COVID. Next slide. So the guidance continues to change. In fact, this slide that I put together on Saturday, the top picture of a nurse taking someone's temperature, is no longer in the guidelines. At least not for summer programs and rec programs. And who knows, it might change again, and we may be doing that. So there's nothing that we care about more than the health and safety of our students, staff, and our community. And as we develop plans for returning to school, that's our goal, to educate staff, parents, students, so they understand how we're going to keep everyone safe. We want to make sure they understand completely how we're going to mitigate the spread, so they understand, like Kathy started in the summer, what PPE means, what screening means. I know Rick Gallant's going to talk about community programs later, but I've met with him and Rick Gorman, and we've already started developing the tools that the parents have to fill out before their students go to the rec programs. And we want to have continuity throughout the whole district so that the town programs, the school programs, the parents will be used to the same questionnaires that DPH wants us to use as we, open and hopefully have success with these openings. Next slide. So we also have to continue the programs through the summer. We have to continue to feed people. We have to continue with MAVEN to track and keep the mitigation. We have to put protocols in place for safe services for nursing. We want the nurses to be the experts, to be available for everyone with questions. And again, we are going to focus on the health and safety of our community, our students, and staff. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. Always great to hear this report. It's always better when it's in person, but I know it's a thing we look forward to every single school year. Your leadership and your nurses give us great comfort, and I know our kids are well served by you and your team. Questions from the members. Let's go down the line. Helen, do you have any questions for Cheryl on this report?
I sure do.
Of course you do.
Oh, no.
And it's all echoey. So I'll just talk through the echo. First of all, Cheryl, it's just such a great pleasure to hear from you, and it's such a privilege that I get to serve on the Health Advisory Committee and hear these things as they're being discussed in real time with all the different folks that you have involved, the Youth Center and Board of Health and Deanna Lima and so many others. So I appreciate the work you're doing day by day. I have three main questions. One is around anxiety. When we're talking about such an increase in anxiety, as a school committee, are there positions we should be thinking about? Are there additional resources you need, whether they're staff needs or training needs, or when we're hiring, do we need to have nurses with mental health experiences? Do we need a social worker? What are the things that your nurses, when they're seeing this anxiety, wish that they had that they may not have in place? And secondly, on that same topic, are we doing referrals for these? Do we have enough resources to make the referrals? Do we have enough resources in the community for the referrals that you wish to make? So I see you rapidly taking notes. So I don't know if you want me to wait for answers or if you want me to just keep going with my questions.
Helen, why don't you ask your last question, then Cheryl can
So
answer
certainly
them.
Nikki Murphy and I talk about this. She has the same concerns that we all do. We have developed programs, nurses with guidance. As you know, I think a couple of years ago, we started in 3rd and 4th grade with some anxiety classes and reduction. You know, I wish I had better answers, but I will bring this back to the next meeting, try to get more for you. And you being on the Health Advisory Committee, we can certainly make sure that that's a priority that we look into. And as we meet in the next few weeks, as we're opening schools in more detail, I know Nikki has some plans for this that she's mentioned in meetings that I've had with her.
Good, thank you very much. I mean, we're a body that's charged with making sure that the resources are available, and our best knowledge comes from the folks that are doing the work. And I know you're in communication with Laureen and with Dr. Gilligan, and that they'll bring those forward to us as well. So you mentioned the correlation between vision and MCAS, and on a personal interest, I wonder if you've done that same kind of work with hearing and MCAS. If there are students who do not do well on the hearing test, are you also seeing that they're having difficulty with their MCAS results? And if you haven't done that, I hope you will. I'd be interested in that.
So now that we've started this program and I have all of the results for hearing, I can very easily do that. Of course, we just started doing it. That's why I only have a few examples to show you in March.
Of course, of course.
I love data, and I'm very interested to see all of the screening tools correlated with things. We did it with attendance. We've tracked a lot of different things. So thank you. Yes, I can. That's an easy thing.
Thank you. Well, and my personal story that many of you have heard, I do have a hearing deficit, and I was screened on a regular basis in school and recommended to have hearing follow-up, which I did not do until I graduated from college. And so it's been a tremendous game changer for me to have access to hearing devices. It's changed the way my family life runs, and it's made my professional life possible. And then the third thing is more a comment. I am so proud of our community, and I said this in Health Advisory, for doing the food bank and the daily meals program, because it gives people choices at a time when their lives are very uncertain and where they don't have control over a lot of things. You don't have control over, whether or not you've been exposed to this virus in some situations. You don't have control over whether or not your kids are in school. You don't have control over whether or not your job is laying you off. But to be able to say, I can go to the food bank and get peanut butter today, and I can ask for a meal as well. It's just such an empowering thing, and I'm so pleased that we've been able to do that. And I thank you for your part and your team's part in providing that choice.
Thank you, Helen. Andrew, any questions or comments for Cheryl?
Sure, I'll try to be somewhat brief. I think Helen really kind of hit on a number of things that I would normally say. Whoa, I feel like I'm really big there. One of the things, Cheryl, I think I say every year is, how amazing and how fantastic your team is. And if you don't know and really appreciate how lucky you are, when I was outside of my house, and I would talk with parents and about things that were going on in schools, one of the things that was always so amazing was the trust and the confidence that they have in your team at all levels, whether it was a child with diabetes or, something, it was always, we talked to the nurse, we just felt so much better. Like, they're really supportive of, whoever the child is, and the ease and the comfort that your team provides in the community on a regular school situation is just amazing. And I don't think that we should ever do this, but there could easily be a competition for like best nurse within the schools, and I don't even know who would win, but there might be some fights over that, and I think a number of the elementary schools would really kind of argue, that they've got the best nurse, and challenge those high school nurses, but they are really fantastic and they are really special. I was really encouraged to hear the collaboration that you have with community programs and, of course, other centers within town about continuity of just where we are and how we're moving forward in terms of opening protocol. I mean, I think that that's just fantastic and really one consistent message that we're providing out to members of the town and the community. And the last thing I want to just kind of share a little bit is I was having a conversation with somebody about what were the nurses doing, right? And so they kind of, well, they're not in school, so what are they doing, right? And it was like, you have no idea what they're doing. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate just the small list of things that I know you have kind of put out today in terms of, the meals, the services, the counseling, the helping people in town who are not necessarily even school members. But, how valuable that is. And when you start to have those conversations, I think people truly, if they're not in the know about the value that the nurses at the North Andover Public Schools provide to our community, they start to know and understand that. And so I really just want to, thank your entire team for that, but I really want to thank you for kind of pulling together the presentation that you did. And I know it doesn't cover everything, but to really highlight some of the amazing ways that you guys make North Andover just a very special place. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Amy, questions, comments?
Helen and Andrew covered all of the things that I was going to say, and in particular, other than the sheer pride I feel in watching and seeing all the things that have been covered and are being done on a community level and a partnership with other agencies in our town. I really loved that new data about the vision and the impact that that's having, and I'm thrilled that you're pursuing that and adding, hearing and other things down the road. I think it's tremendous to show what an impact those screenings have, and get that how you support the learning in that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Holly?
Yeah, I also want to say that this is also my favorite presentation of the year. It's so informative. It just gives us so much to think about that we hadn't thought about, like Amy just said, the vision and correlation that way. The social emotional piece always surprises me. It saddens me that it keeps going up, but at the same time, I'm glad we're tracking it and doing something about it. And I also agree with Andy Furman's public comment earlier that the kids are at so much greater risk now. I'm seeing it in my own son. Not being in school is causing such emotional issues that I echo what Helen said, and whatever resources you need, I would love to see us be able to provide that. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Let's stick with the health theme here. We got two more items. Let's get in case you have questions for Cheryl. The first one is our annual review of our wellness policy. We have to review this on a yearly basis. At this point, the Advisory Council is not recommending any revisions to policy ADF for FY21, so there is no recommended action required here. Again, let's see any questions. Holly, do you have any questions about the wellness policy?
I do not.
Amy?
I do not. Thank you.
Andrew?
You're not. Thank
Helen?
you.
Helen?
All set, thank you.
Okay. So that we'll move on from that. And first reading of annual appointment of a school physician. The administration is requesting that the committee appoint Dr. Chan to serve as the school physician consultant for FY21 at a cost of $6,300. During the 2019-2020 school year, Dr. Chan provided the district with expert advice, allowing the district to respond appropriately to a large range of health issues. This is the first reading, so no action required. Cheryl, anything you want to mention about Dr. Chan before we move on? I know he's obviously, he usually attends, but.
This evening, he is a tremendous resource for us. He's involved with a parent call next week. He's a great resource. He writes the orders for us, and he was very helpful during this COVID time as well, answering questions. His office is open, and he's, I guess, just to get the message out to parents that it's still important to have your well visits to make sure all the children in our community have immunizations. And he's happy to do them outside, and if you're afraid to go into the office, but all pediatrician offices are open and love to have well visits to get kids on track.
Thank you, Cheryl. I know it's just the first reading, but if there's any questions or comments, because obviously we'll vote this officially in 2 weeks. Helen, any questions, comments about Dr. Chan?
No, I would just again comment that as he attends the Health Advisory Council and he provides really valuable answers to a lot of questions, and he is so respectful and listening to our nurses to hear like what they're hearing, in a way that he may not be hearing it in the same way, right? So he utilizes his colleagues as well as compliments them.
Thank you, Helen. Andrew?
So, I think we've had Dr. Chang for a number of years, longer than I've been on the committee. But my question is really to Cheryl, next year, the opening of school, may be quite different, and there may be additional resources or different things that we need to do. So I guess it's not really a question, but I would love for you to work with, Dr. Gilligan and Mr. Mealy, if there is a need or a concern that we need an additional physician to help. I think we could probably keep them full time with questions and things like that. But, if things change and there's an additional physician that we may need to bring on or something like that, I would love to be able to make sure we are supporting you and our students as best as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Amy?
Nothing, thank you.
Holly?
I have nothing.
Yep. Neither do I. So I think we'll take the official vote on our second reading in 2 weeks. I think that concludes all our health-related issues. Cheryl, on behalf of all of us, thank you for all your hard work over the last several months, and to the nurses as well. So thank you, Cheryl. You can sign off if you want to now.
Thanks,
Okay.
Cheryl.
Okay, I'm told Eamon is on the line. So Eamon, why don't you, if you can hear me, why don't you bang out a quick student report for us?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
All right. So just want to apologize that I don't have a camera right now. I just don't have access to that at the moment. But so today was the last day of virtual classes for most people, even though the official end is the 15th. I know most of my classmates had their final class today. So if you want to ask me any questions about my experience with remote learning, now that I've had a trimester under my belt, I can answer what my experience was like. The senior parade was last weekend, and it was an astounding success. I think everyone who went, spectators and the people participating, had a very fun time, and it was definitely a worthwhile experience. It didn't make up for the loss of the end of the year, but it certainly did compensate for some of it. Seeing as it's the beginning of summer, most fall sports are beginning preseason training. So you'll see runners around town. You'll see football players beginning to lift, getting into their routine, which is a good thing. And hopefully, as restrictions begin to ease, teams can meet more with some regularity. And then this past week, all non-seniors were able to drop off their textbooks, uniforms, things of that nature at the high school that, had been sitting around at home since the middle of March. So we're now going to begin getting summer work and things that will help us forward learning next fall. And lastly, the high school is planning on hosting the SAT on a weekday at the high school at the end of September in order to give the senior class a chance to take the SAT if they haven't already without having to compete with students from other schools to get one of those coveted spots. And yeah, that is all I've got for you tonight. Relatively brief report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Eamon. Absolutely agree with you. We had a great time on Saturday at the car parade. I've been told it might be an annual tradition going forward. So I know Chet, you're still on the line there. Chet, great job. Everyone who participated was a great time. Let's see if there are any questions from the members first, Eamon. Holly, any questions?
Yeah, Eamon, I would love to hear your experience with the remote learning.
Okay, so I think that having it be a pass-fail system does not incentivize students to try, because if there is no grade at the end, then people weren't coming onto the calls, they weren't regularly showing up. Teachers were receiving work, months later, and it was only the bare minimum 60% threshold. So I know that, this was the best that could have been devised within a short period of time, but going forward into next fall, if there is some form of remote learning, I believe it should involve some form of grading in order to incentivize students to actively participate in the learning that is going on.
Thank you, Eamon. Holly, anything else follow up on that?
No, thank you, Eamon.
Amy?
I appreciate your thoughts, Eamon. If there are other things that you wanted to comment on, I'd love to hear them, but I do appreciate your thoughts there, because ultimately every student is responsible for his or her own opportunities are offered, and if you decide you take advantage of it, you do. If you don't, you don't. But I think a lot of kids, and I'm sure myself at that age, I would have preferred it. I would have done better with an incentive for a grade probably. So that's interesting feedback to hear that you did see some kids just need that incentive.
Andrew?
Yeah, I would just agree with Eamon as well. Having a rising high school junior now, and two in the middle school, there's definitely just I just have to get it done and submit it, click it and send it on its way. I think that, if there is anything like this, again, there has to be a grading component to it. I don't think it's fair to all of the students that I think, work hard and are taking advantage of what's there and some of the resources that are provided to them. And, I really agree with you on that. We need to do true numeric grades in terms of moving forward.
And Helen?
Well, thank you, Eamon, so much for joining us tonight. And I will echo what the others on the committee have said. I went to the car parade. It was fantastic. I watched several of the offerings on video, and I just thought they were all great. And I would love for there to be a car parade every year, maybe as the start of senior week, because I think for families with young children that I saw there, it's very inspirational to have that goal of becoming one of those seniors. So you all are serving as such great role models, and I appreciate it. I know you're not a senior, but still, I think the participation is just so important. So thank you for that. I wonder if that weekday SATs is just for seniors, or if it will also be available for juniors, because the juniors missed the SATs this spring as they're. Oh no, so those juniors will be seniors. Thanks for going on that little journey with me. So I hear what you're saying about grades, and one of the things that I've heard suggested about grades is that there be, in addition to pass fail, pass high pass, or pass low pass, not both high pass and low pass, because then it becomes the letter grades and the percentages. And especially at the start of this, it being all new, we certainly didn't want to hurt students. But to incentivize, it might be great to have pass, high pass, as we look at options. And I'm sure the high school administration is looking at all those things. So I would love to hear, Eamon, your highlight from remote learning.
Ooh, that's a good question. So for me, it would be when my biology teacher had us do a scavenger hunt outside looking for different types of leaves. And then we showed him our leaves over the webcam, and it was a very strange experience, but it was certainly certainly something I'm going to remember.
Interesting.
Well, thank you. That's a really creative use of your energies and that teaching opportunity. Thank you.
So, Eamon, thank you. I think generally, we don't have a student report during the summer, but of course, if you ever want to check in with us, just let us know. I think we have a meeting in a couple weeks, but and then during the summer. But that'll be up to you, okay, Eamon?
All right, perfect.
Feel free to email myself or Ms. Zagari if you have any interest in that. We'd love to have you.
Definitely.
Thanks, Eamon.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of free time this summer.
All right,
Thank
we'll be
you.
running.
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Eamon.
Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report. Thank you, everybody, for your patience today, by the way. Greg, do you want to kick this off? I know you got a couple guests on the line there.
Absolutely. I'm going to have Assistant Superintendent Lorene Marks introduce her team and the folks she worked with on the Seal of Biliteracy. So, Lorene?
Okay, this is Lorene. And a few months ago at school committee meeting, we had a working group present about the Seal of Biliteracy, which is awarded to students who demonstrate competency in both English and in another language. Shortly thereafter, school was closed, and we weren't really sure whether students would be able to pursue this opportunity or not. Tonight, we are very proud to present the 22 students who speak English and another language and are receiving this distinction on their diploma. I turn it over to Principal Jackson and Ms. Carroll to announce the students who received this honor, the Seal of Biliteracy, on their diplomas.
Thank you, Maureen, and hello, everyone. It was interesting doing the math. It was about 3 months ago, the day before we left for our in-person school back in March, that we got together to deliver this presentation. In our continuing conversations about equity, and recognizing the value of language diversity, strengthening our intergroup communications and honoring multiple cultures and languages within our community, and encouraging students to study and master languages. One of the things that we were in the process of is looking for ways to recognize our students with the Seal of Biliteracy. We were, I think a little behind some of our neighboring districts, but had a wonderful committee made up of Jen Federici, an EL tutor from the Ann Bradstreet, Rebecca Melnick, an 8th grade Spanish teacher, Brooke Randall, assistant principal at the high school, Kristen Ando, our humanities coordinator, and Chris Carroll. Got a chance to join me, and we developed what turned into an opportunity for students to still be recognized even in the midst of a health crisis. So I just want to thank you guys for taking the opportunity to hear us back in March and have us back tonight to recognize our students. So I'll turn it over to Chris so she can go through the students.
May I present, as we do when we teach online, can I present a Chrome window?
I guess so.
Go for
Okay.
it. Go for it, Chris.
Yes, I'm getting
All right,
the
there we
thumbs
go.
up from the control room.
So we had a great group, very supportive. Chet was wonderful, as he always is. And I asked him, because we had only had 3 kids sign up under the circumstances, I asked him if he would blast it again, and he did. And then we pushed it in our AP classes. And we came up with a lot of kids, and they took a test that was proctored with artificial intelligence and people hired by the Avant company. And it was a little complicated, but everybody stuck with it. And this year's results were really impressive under the circumstances. So our DC, there are 3 kinds of seals that we gave. The DC Seal of Biliteracy with distinction, So Isabel Juan, who was the salutatorian, she earned highest honors in Mandarin. Leah Cotter in Spanish. Emily Grant, Mike's daughter, in Spanish. Gabrielle Da Diego in Spanish. Amy Guggenberger in Spanish. Corey Krovitz in Spanish. Olivia, they're all in Spanish. Olivia Murphy, Jack Muse, Cindy Pham, Christine Spinoza, Jet Stud, and Emma Stout. So the seal of biliteracy from DC was earned by Jenna Byers, Erin Green, Kelsey Hanley, Rafaela Machado, Samuel Rosende, Molly Savory, and Kelly Pham. And the Language Opportunity Council seal of biliteracy was earned by Holly Tang, Anna McGrath, and Evie Goslin.
Great. Congratulations to all the students.
Thank you. We are pushing, connecting the seal to the Chamber of Commerce in the fall. The group that has been pushing this whole initiative for a long time is going to have our quarterly meeting in the fall. And the meaning of the seal is not just to honor biliteracy, but also to connect kids to employment and educational opportunities at the state level. So we'll be looking forward to working with that in the community and working with the Chamber of Commerce in September. So thank you for your support, Lorene and Chet and everybody else, and especially Kristen, who is always so appreciative of everything that people do. She's very kind and very motivating. So, that's it.
Chris, thanks for all you do.
No, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
And Chet, before you sign off, is Chet still here?
Yes.
All right, are we moving on to the next section, Chet Rizzi?
Chet's up there.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize for the questions. I'm going to reverse order. I'm sorry. Holly, any questions, comments?
No, that's great. I love that.
Amy, any questions or comments?
Just one comment. I think I just wanted to point out, in addition to this wonderful, I'm also a language major as well, so I really appreciate that. But in addition, I believe this was the first year that the language students had the tassels for graduation for the various languages. If they'd mastered, I don't remember what the criteria were, but this was the first year. Is that correct?
We began, we rebooted our language honor societies this year.
Yes.
We had an induction ceremony in the fall, and they all graduated with the little tassels.
The cord. And I just thought that was an excellent way to honor and encourage further pursuit of language learning. So thank you for that. And I think the students who had them really appreciated that as well. So I just wanted to make sure people knew about that too.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. Thank you very much for really kind of helping to get this going. And I'm sure it was a tremendous amount of work if it had been under normal circumstances and certainly in a remote situation added to that. I am just curious. I didn't see any students with German. So I'm just wondering if it was offered in German or we just didn't have students who take advantage of it. I love that the one student, with Mandarin, that's absolutely fantastic. But I'm just wondering if German was there in other languages and we had students who tried to take advantage of those as well.
I am going to make sure to bring a message to the committee here that the woman that's teaching German for us right now we've never had an employee work harder to get a program up and running again. And it's starting to work. She is making some progress. She only had really one person in AP who even took the test.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
Yeah, she's rebooting that program. She's trying really hard. And I know if you look forward to the future, you'll see all kinds of testing going on next year. And next year we hope to test hope I'm not speaking out of line here, Chet, but I know everybody else is doing it across districts. testing juniors as well as seniors, and maybe a couple times a year. All languages are on the table,
Okay.
we can do portfolio language assessment as well as standardized testing.
Okay. I wasn't questioning German. I was really just curious if, I don't want you to misinterpret what I was saying. I think it's fantastic. And hopefully we can have another language represented next year. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen?
Yep, I have two questions. One, this AI test proctoring was for proficiency in speaking, reading, and writing, all three?
All four modalities, so reading, writing, speaking, and listening.
Okay, terrific. That's exciting. And then my other question would be, how many of these are native or heritage language speakers?
Just, I believe only 3 of them in Spanish. No, Isabel is the Mandarin speaker, she as well. But doing a little research with some of the students that will be taking AP next year, it looks like we're going to have people who will qualify in all kinds of languages. We just need to do the investigation to find out who is fluent or proficient in what.
I think that's so exciting because when we can really shore up and affirm those folks who have different languages available in their home life and in their cultural life, it's really such an affirming experience for those students. So thank you so much.
I'd just like to make one last comment, and that's that I didn't do the work to support the standardized testing industry. I did it because I know that there will be connections, like I said, to employment and to credits at Salem State, credits at UMass Amherst, and they just haven't yet been solidified. So I'm working on a committee to help that because this was supposed to be a program that moves the dial for kids, not just gets them to pay for another standardized exam. So we're working on it.
Understood. I just think that's really great. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Anything else on that, Greg or Lorene or Chet?
Unbelievable work by Chris Carroll and Kristen Ando and Lorene and Chet and all the students involved. Just remarkable in the teachers of world language. So thank you so much. And I just wanted to see if Chet could stick around for a few seconds after this.
Sure, absolutely. He can still. That's up to him. Thank you, Chris.
Where else would I rather be, Dr. Gilligan?
Well, good night, Chris.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Great, thanks. Just in between reports, I wanted to just say I think Chet, Scott Young, the vice principal for the seniors, Lauren McDonald, class advisor, Derville Bentley, class advisor, did a remarkable job with all the celebrations, the awards day, the scholarship. I also want to recognize the school committee. They put in a lot of hours in the gymnasium awarding these individual diplomas as they came across the stage. I think I saw just about most of you there, but I know over many days you were there. And then if Brian Frazier could just step out for a second. He's the executive director of the North Andover Cable Access Channel, and I think he's an unsung hero sometimes. The work that his crew did, I can only imagine, must have been hours and hours and hours in a short period of time to put together that type of programming that people got to watch. And I just think that these people should be recognized, and I really appreciate all the work.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I totally agree with Chet, your team. Fabulous time on Saturday. That car parade was a lot of laughs, and I know I brought my kids. My kids really enjoyed it. The whole town enjoyed it. So I don't know if that's going to be standard fare going forward, but you deserve a lot of credit for putting that together and stuff. And I got to give another shout out to my friend Amy Mabley over there, who did a lot of the work too. So congratulations, fantastic job.
Thank you, but I truly did not.
No, thank you. Thanks to Amy, Andrew, Holly specifically, and also to Helen, David, for your time putting in with Senior Week as well. As I said, it's about the community, and when this health crisis hit, many hands make lighter work. It wasn't light work to say the least, but I think when you put good people together and give them a little bit of time to make some decisions, I think we can make some special things. So we'll continue to do best we can for the students North Andover.
Thank you, Chet. Dr. Gillen, a couple more items on your agenda?
Absolutely. Next up, we have Director Rick Gallant from the Community Programs talking about summer 2020.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight and for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about community programs and how we plan to open for the summer. First off, I'm going to try my best to one-up Cheryl Barzak, since her presentation is always your favorite. I'm going to try to win you all over tonight with mine. But seriously, before I start, I want to thank all of you on the committee, as well as our administration, for all the work you guys are doing behind the scenes. I can imagine that these are difficult times with so many uncertainties out there. And it comforts me to know that you guys are all working to make sure we're headed in the right direction. So thank you for all your work. I'd like to retrace our steps and kind of bring us back to March 13th. I think, Dr. Amelia, get my slides. There you go. Great. So back on March 13th, you guys all know what happened. We abruptly shut down. And, at that time, the coronavirus had lasting effects on community programs and that we couldn't have seen coming, right? At the end of a school year, usually it's a bittersweet time for students where they have accomplishments they're excited about. There's some closure with friends and classmates and teachers, and they didn't have any of that this year. And a lot of our students that are aging out of our program missed out on some traditions and celebrations that they normally used to having. So it just left a kind of bitter taste in our mouths how abruptly it all ended. And to compound that, we were all very excited about rolling out our summer programs that we were close to finalizing. And then everything just kind of came to a screeching halt. And we were left with a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. As you can imagine, the phone started ringing a lot in my office during that time with staff, questioning their jobs for the rest of the school year, staff questioning their jobs for the summer, parents questioning what programs would be available for their kids in the summer, if there would be any, and vendors calling and saying, hey, you're going to be able to honor your commitment? Are you going to be able to continue on with what we planned? And again, we just had to be patient. We really had to be patient and wait for the governor to release his guidelines. And that's the best that we could do at the time. Thankfully, this past week on June 1st, the governor released a 32-page document that outlined the initial guidelines for health and safety for us to open up summer programs. I spent the rest of last week diving into that document. I read over it 3 or 4, 5 times, maybe 6 times. I can't remember how many times I read it. But I also shared it with my staff, and I asked them to do the same. It was very clear when I read it that this was not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach to implementing these guidelines. A lot of our summer programs are very unique in nature in terms of the size, how they're offered, what they offer, and it was going to be very clear that we had to alter them and interpret these guidelines very differently for each program. So what we did was we asked the staff to review those guidelines, think of all the questions they had, all the concerns that they had, and if they'd be able to make that work. And we scheduled a meeting for June 8th. And on June 8th, we met with all of our staff, comprised of high school coaches, teachers, TAs, and Cheryl Barzak was there, and we just spent time diving into the document, making sure that everyone understood the protocols that were going to be needed in place to run a successful program, and then give them the chance to ask questions. There was many questions, as you can imagine. But it was a productive working session, and it got us off on the right start. You can switch slides, Jim. So what we came away with was that it was clear there were going to be a lot of changes that needed to be made in order for us to meet those guidelines. And it was very clear that summer was going to look very different this year than it has in years past. Some changes the parents are going to see is that we have to reduce enrollment. Our capacity is going to be down. What that means is, I'm sure you heard earlier in the evening that class size is going to be capped at 10. So we're going to have students in groups of 10 with no more than 1 or 2 staff members with them. But it also means students can't leave that group. So what happens is students are being grouped in groups of 10, and they're staying with that group for the duration of the program. There's no cross contamination issues going on. Kids are going to stay with their group and they can't go to another group. Same with staff. They're going to be staying with the same group during the whole time. We will be able to have multiple groups of 10, but again, for the most part, we're going to have smaller numbers this year. We've also had to relocate programs just in the idea of trying to avoid overcrowding in buildings to mitigate any potential spread of the virus. So we're kind of spreading out amongst the district as much as we can so that we can manage all the numbers that we're going to have, hopefully that we're going to have, and all the pickup and drop-offs that we're going to need to deal with in terms of getting people in and out of the building safely. And And we're also changing the design of some of our programs. A lot of our programs now are going to have to account for physical distancing. A lot of our programs usually are sharing equipment and materials. That's going to have to be limited. Specifically for our sports clinics and leagues, those programs are going to be taking a more skills and drills based approach as opposed to games and scrimmages, right? So there's going to be a lot of changes that we see in how we can implement these programs. And then some programs that we felt just weren't safe to open under these current guidelines, we were able to convert to a virtual model. One of those programs being is Camp Invention, one of our more popular summer programs. It's one of our larger programs, and we have upwards to 100 students every year. And just based on the modality of the program in terms of kids moving through modules and sharing equipment and the number of kids, it just didn't seem like it was safe to offer. So we made that a virtual program, as well as some others that you'll see released later next week. And then there's some programs that had to be canceled altogether, which is heart-wrenching because we put a lot of work into preparing these programs. But under the governor's guidelines, there were no field trips allowed. And we had scheduled 7 weeks of full day trips this summer. And we had to cancel all of those. And specifically, I want to thank someone tonight, Pat McGravy, who's an 8th grade teacher at the middle school. He does a wonderful job of planning a lot of trips for us over the summer. And he had just finished planning 3 full weeks of really awesome trips for our middle school students. No sooner did they get phone calls one after another from vendors saying they had to cancel. So that was definitely difficult to hear. But I mean, again, it was expected, but never easy to hear. So in the next few weeks, what we're going to be looking at is training. And that's the most important piece here is training our staff to make sure they're up to speed on what the protocols are, the health and safety protocols are. And I know Cheryl's going to be helpful with that process as well. But making sure that every staff member who's working with our kids this summer understands what it means to social distance, what it means to wear face coverings when you can and can't wear them, what symptoms to look for if you think kids are getting ill, how to respond in that situation. How do we sanitize our programs? Do we do it? What frequency do we do that? During the day, before kids get there, before and after snack, before and after activities, when they come from outside. So there's going to be a lot that we have to cover in the next 3 weeks. Hand washing. I know everyone's heard about the hand washing song. If you sing Happy Birthday 2 times, right? So we're going to be doing all these things with the kids to make sure that everyone's up to speed and doing what's best for kids and keeping everybody safe. But the most important part will be training, right? And getting the information out there. And I think Cheryl spoke to that we're all working together to make sure the same consistent message is getting out to everybody so that we're all on the same page when we do hit the ground running in July. Another thing that you probably heard a lot of in the news is PPE. And I was hopefully ahead of the curve in May, and I went out and I stockpiled a lot of things. We have plenty of gloves and masks and hand sanitizer and cleaning solutions. We have all these things kind of ready to go. So when the schools are opening or our programs are opening this summer, we have everything that people are going to need to be safe. If you want to go to the next slide, Jim. In terms of a timeline, what we're looking to do is we're just wrapping up we had to reschedule a lot of classes this summer, right? So we're just finishing that up right now, making sure that we're not double booking locations and everyone's getting what they need. So we will be revealing our program list on June 16th. And then on June 17th, I believe at 9 a.m., the registration site goes live and opens for registrations. And then we'll be getting programs as early as July 6th. You'll see programs start running in July 6th, and they'll run throughout the summer. Our hope is that it's very successful and that we're easing any concerns that parents or the community has so that when the school does open again, we're ready to jump and hit the ground running and offer these programs to everybody. That's really about all I have tonight. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them for you.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Rick. I really appreciate all your work that you do, your team does. My kids are Kid Stop Kids. They participate in the programs. You mentioned the field trips. They both were day trippers last year. They're going to miss out on that. But looking forward to seeing what we have in store for us this summer. I'm sure they'll be great as always. Questions from the committee. Helen, you want to go first this time?
Sure. When you open your registration live, is that first come, first serve? Are you going to have some reserved spaces for people who aren't available at that time? There's different restrictions for those lives.
Yeah, so what we're going to try to do is when I send an email out, I'll send an email out to the district, to everybody, probably Monday evening, and let them know that if there's anyone ahead of time that is going to have access issues to internet or computers, to contact me directly on Tuesday, and I'll arrange for them to either do it over the phone or they can even stop by and I can meet them outside the office to do paper registrations.
That's great. I just think it's really going to be important that if that students not be completely closed out. I mean, some things are probably going to fail and you won't be able to accommodate everybody, but if you can make sure everybody has something, that'll be very appreciated.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Helen? Andrew?
I just want to thank you. Every year, you know, there's just amazing programs that are offered in our town and in our community to the kids. And I don't know what other community, you know, has these type of programs available to them. Community programs is really a special gem here in North Andover. And so, you know, I just think, you know, your creativity and the creativity of your staff kind of as you move forward is really fantastic. And thank you very much for all that you're doing. One, to keep everyone safe, but two, to make it fun and exciting and just something that the kids want to do. They're desperate to get out of the houses. So anything outdoors, I think that you're going to have a lot of signups.
Amy?
No, I also want to thank you, Rick, and I'm not surprised that I'm relieved that we got the clearance to be able to do something. But I'm also, over the years, I've seen how many programs you've created, you've added, how much the offerings have grown. And so I'm not the least bit surprised that you were able to adapt and overcome and come up with a raft of options for this unique situation. So thank you for that. And thank you to your team, and look forward to seeing what the options are.
Holly?
I just want to agree with everything everybody's already said, and thank you for everything you've done, the hard work. And I appreciate the email that went out, I think, earlier this week or late last week, saying that more information will be forthcoming. I thought that was really helpful.
Thank you, Rick. Anything else, Dr. Gilligan, with Rick?
I know.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
Dr. Mealy.
Yeah, I know we say it a lot, but it bears repeating. We are really fortunate in North Andover with the level of people that we have. You know, you saw Cheryl earlier. Erica Murphy's been mentioned, does a tremendous job. John Mullen with the custodians, and Rick Gallant. I mean, they just do such a great job for all of us, representing us as well as anybody could. And I think it bears repeating as often as we can say it.
I agree 100%. My kids enjoy it immensely. So, Rick, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your night.
You too. Take care. Thank you. Dr. Gilligan.
Speaking of tremendous people, I have a couple before we move on to the school reopening piece. I don't know if many people saw there was an article in the Eagle Tribune the other night about one of our students who's a sophomore, Gina Gutierrez, who was one of the organizers for the Black Lives Matter event over at the Drummond Playground. I would say there was probably close to 400 or 500 people there, spread out. And it was a really well-done event, powerful messages and words. And I couldn't be more proud to have a sophomore help organize an event like that. Secondly, along those lines, you know, I'd just like to say, Lorene Marks does a lot behind the scenes. And the work we've been doing around inequity and bias, the work she's been doing has really been tremendous, from bringing in Mirko Chardon to kick off the year, to having Dr. Kim Parker come in for PD, for taking kids down to see Dr. Ibram Kendi, as well as book clubs, Kristen Ando running an anti-bias course that was well attended by administrators and staff, and her work with Race Amity, and also bringing this work, combining it with the Stevens Memorial Library. So we've got a ways to go, just probably like a lot of society, but these are really positive steps in North Andover, and I think Gina Gutierrez is a really shining, bright light.
Absolutely. Okay. What else on your report?
And
here?
last but not least.
Definitely not least.
No. Just an update on talking about summer and beyond. So I think we've heard a lot about summer. So let's talk about the beyond. It's really remarkable that as the school year is ending, this is usually a great time of joy and relief. And, you know, I think there are some big challenges ahead for all districts. And, you know, we're going to tackle them head on. And I know that folks had seen the guidance on June 7th put out by the commissioner. And it did cause a lot of noise in the press, social media, Facebook groups. And I think it's important to note that that was really intended for summer. They put in the word potentially fall, and I think that was a trial balloon to kind of, see how the public would react. And I think that they got that loud and clear because a few days after, the commissioner, Jeff Riley, who used to be the superintendent in Lawrence, had sent some information along to me just that we should not make any broad-based judgments or inferences based on the June 7th guidance, and that it's really important that we wait for the fall guidance, which should be out shortly, because the guidance that came out last week, or just days ago, that is based on public health conditions on the ground today and now, not what the future may look like. So I thought that was really important information. The other thing that they released was a PPE ordering supply list, about 25% if you're in school, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. And that really got people going. And again, the commissioner really reassured me that that is shouldn't be used for broad inferences around frequency of attending school, class sizes, student-teacher ratios, all those types of things. It was just simply a template for ordering supplies. So that was a bit relieving. I'll tell you this, I think that I'm really proud of the work that the whole team did. They came together to put together a remote learning plan under the guidelines of the state, and in a short time, I think they did a remarkable job. I think moving forward, that whatever we do is going to look a lot different moving forward and moving ahead. The last thing is, I don't think we can wait for the state, because I think there are some knowns and some unknowns. But certainly there are some knowns, and we've learned a lot from this spring. So some of the knowns, for sure, we have to take a look at our technology, because that could play a role potentially. I think the other knowns are cleaning supplies, sanitizer, PPE, and Dr. Mealy and Mr. Mullen have been really proactive with that. And then most importantly, and this is the one that I think is the most important, is the mental health and social emotional well-being of our students. I think our staff, and I even think the parents. But right now, Nikki Murphy is working on a plan to really help out with that reentry, because not only am I particularly concerned about all of our kids, but I think about our students who receive special education services, maybe on 504s, our EL students, or maybe receive free or reduced lunch, in addition to everyone else. So I think that plan for well-being and reducing anxiety is going to be critical. So that said, we've been planning and meeting here internally in the central office, working with the town and taking a look at all these different pieces. Now, moving forward, we are in the process of we're establishing working groups, like a task force. So we have working groups. I think many of you may have got a letter the other day that I sent out, that we will be taking a look at, all aspects of operations to run a school and how we can do so safely. One thing that I think it's important to note that a lot of folks don't know, the way DESC is talking right now is they're talking about very prescriptive programming. So they were talking about being 85–90% prescriptive. So they maybe have a platform that they may introduce, or a few other items that will be good, but they will set those expectations for school environment, teaching and learning, operations, technology, food services, transportation, social emotional learning. And if you could start thinking about all these things, there are quite a bit. So to that end, we have, I met with the PTO presidents this morning, and tomorrow a survey will go out. And that's going to be very important, because it's going to be able to get feedback on people's experiences, and it's a way for folks to participate who may not be able to participate in the working groups that we're going to have. But on that survey, there'll also be a section that parents can put in to volunteer to be part of working groups. So the working groups that we will have, we will have a working group of parents and community members, hopefully with representation from different schools and different perspectives. We are working on developing a working group of students. We also be working closely with public safety, public health department, as well as town officials in the school leadership. And last but not least, faculty and staff, which we've developed an institute the week of June 22nd to explore all these different options from different perspectives across all grade levels. We had 55 applicants as teachers that want to do it with us, And it won't be all 55. We do have to limit it. But that institute will run all week. It is going to run in person at North Andover High School in the cafeteria, appropriately socially distanced. And I think one of the most exciting parts is we've been able to get John Dioria. He's probably one of the top PD guys in New England. He's from Teachers 21 and used to be at UPenn running their program. And we're excited to do that. So in the end, we have folks that will be looking at all the different options, so that we're prepared. When we get the state guidance, we may have it even at the time of the institute, but we're really prepared because there are a lot of things that we have to do well before school kicks off. Each of the working groups will then have a representative report out to a small steering committee, and then we'll bring that information forward, working with the union and the school committee to make the best decision to get our kids back safely and to provide a really robust educational experience. So that's really where we're at with an update on that. I just think it's good to be proactive. It's good to involve folks, and we'll be really working hard with the town side, particularly with the $2.7 million in reimbursable. Hopefully, pieces to get it done. So.
Well, first of all, Greg, thank you. Obviously, the public is dying to know, and it's important that they know that you folks have been working on this internally. Can you maybe, before I go to the members, could you expand on your meeting with the PTO presidents? I hope all the schools are represented, but like, what can parents expect for input and communication? Because I think, and we don't know to a certain extent, but what can they expect as far as this working group goes?
Yeah, so David, my late father used to say the only thing worse than knowing something is not knowing. So we wanted to really, the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've been saying, well, what do we know for sure that will be a part of this? But for the parents, as part of the working group, I think they have a unique perspective because we'll have parents from different levels, right? We will have parents of kids who receive special education services, who may receive English language services. So their perspective and the ability for them to come out of there with a representative to meet with a smaller group of all the groups together to the steering committee, I think it's just critical that their voice is heard, because I think that, we are stronger when we get different opinions and different pieces. I know look, I'm a parent. I know I come into the office, and I'm lucky that I can come in the office. My wife has the dining room table. My son has the den. My daughter sits in the kitchen. Everyone wants to get kids back, the best way possible. But I think that it's important that as we think about this huge task of really looking at, there's, probably about 3 possibilities. We're out remotely completely, we're back in school with some type of hybrid blend, or we have a modified split schedule and some other work, So I think looking at all the different angles, they'll be helpful, particularly around thinking about transportation, thinking around special education operations, food services, schedules, all of those types of components, David. And the other piece is tomorrow in the link, there'll also be a survey. And yeah, there'll be some rating scales, but more importantly, I really like when they put in there's a chance to comment. So we'll be asking, about their experience with remote learning, but also additions like ideas moving forward and ways to improve. Remember, remote learning was really a stopgap measure here in the Commonwealth, and I think that any type of remote learning, I think like MCAS 2.0, I think it will be remote learning 2.0 if there's any part of having that within the schools.
Great. Well, communication will be key. Holly, questions, comments?
Yeah, Greg, I just want to follow up on the comment you just made about the 3 possibilities. Does that mean there's absolutely 0 chance that the kids will be back 100%?
Oh, excuse me. No, there's actually, that's an example of a couple possibilities that we would have to plan for because we don't know. Absolutely, all the students back in is probably the most preferred possibility, but that's something that we have a lot of experience when everyone's back. There may be some precautions that are different, but yeah, don't read into that. That was just an example of a couple different things that people may have different perspectives. I know Mr. Furman tonight, Andy had some great ideas, And believe me, everywhere I go, Holly, they're like, you really know. Just tell us now.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I have to admit, we've looked at just preliminarily, I've probably seen about 40, 45 different scenarios. So I continue to meet with groups of educators from across the world through NEASC. So a couple weeks ago, I had a chance to sit down with some folks from Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and I have a conference next week to sit in on. So that's been helpful too, because there are a lot of models out there, and we'll have to figure out what's best for us here in North Andover, that we can get kids safely to school. My hope is that we're all back. So.
Yeah.
Right. And then I have another follow-up question on the working groups.
Mm-hmm.
How large will the group that includes the parents be? And will there be multiple of them or just one? And how long through the summer do you expect it to go?
So I think we have to be really nimble. So I think just like the teachers group, the parents group, it's probably going to be somewhere between 15 and 20. Like around that amount. We have to take a look at representation. But I think the survey will give a lot of folks an opportunity to put information in, but really focused a couple meetings to get all these different perspectives, I think are really important. And I think that's hard to do as the groups grow. So even though we'd love to have the 55 teachers, that's going to really shrink as well.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks.
Amy, questions, comments?
Yes, so I have two questions. One's kind of a comment question. I saw, as having a middle school student, the teachers constantly were asking the kids for feedback. What do you like? What's working? What's not working? And I don't know about all middle school kids, but my middle school kid, I had to beg her to give feedback, and I wasn't always successful. She gave me tons of feedback about what she hated and what she loved, but for her to then share and articulate that with the teachers was something else. So all that to say, I know the teachers in middle school have been surveying kids constantly. I would encourage you to consider surveying, and you said you had some student working groups considered, surveying even high school students, if only them, because they will give you and will articulate, I think, back some feedback. Some middle school kids probably would as well. Mine was a hit or miss situation. So just something to consider there. And secondly, I don't know if you know, but if you could comment, you've said that you think that the DESE, the state's going to come with a 80, 85, 90% prescriptive guidelines. Do you mean that they could tell us you must go back halftime? Could they give us that level of specific guidance?
Well, certainly, one thing about DESE is when they say something's coming in a week, it's usually 2 weeks out. But in terms of answering your question, they may, I know that the commissioner and the governor work closely together. It's all how you, I guess, think about prescriptive. I think about it in terms of teaching and learning and equity and maybe some platforms that are similar. But I know it's, here's an example of a parent, school committee member, but a parent thinking about prescriptive, meaning like you have to specifically do this, or these are the amount of kids for that. So we're eagerly awaiting that fall guidance, but moving ahead with planning as well. So,
thank you, Amy. Andrew?
I think right now, without official guidance, it's going to be really tough to figure out what this is going to look like. But I am encouraged, of course, Gilly, and I know I'm in a lot of communication with you, that we're making steps to go forward. I think that people understand kind of what happened in the spring, but what that plan is going to look like in the fall is regardless going to need to be dramatically different. So I look forward to some updates, as well does the community.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks,
Helen?
Andrew.
Helen?
Yes, sir. I am pleased that there's going to be a survey, and I heard that you said you were going to send it out by email. I would encourage you to also make a phone call and include it in your tweets and print it out on some paper and give it out with the meals. Have it available at the food bank that we have, because surveys do not get responses without an awful lot of promotion. I know you had excellent responses to your survey on entry, and I know you did a lot of work to get that done. So, even some help for families with EL to be able to respond to the survey. All those things feel like they'd be really important to get the feedback that you're looking for.
Great. Helen, I will mention that Dr. Mealy had told me that we will get surveys up at the food line for pickup with Erica Murphy. And someone else suggested maybe putting them out at Starchy's. So I guess there's outdoor dining there now.
Maybe.
It's been quite popular. So absolutely.
Greg, just quickly to kind of dovetail what Helen was saying, I think, parents know what's going on. They know there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think they're going to give us a little bit of rope here. They're going to have a little patience, but the key is going to be communication throughout the summer of what's going on, any kind of decisions that we're making, any kind of updates that can get. I mean, people have got to, usually this time of year, people just can't wait to get out of school and go away and whatever. But now I think as much communication as possible from you and your team. I know you'll do the best job you can, but I always think we're taking that extra step, like Helen was saying. And last thing I want to say is, I know how hard your team's been working. It's important that when you're scheduling vacations for them, make sure they're not allowed to say it. I know you're going to do this, I'm just going to say it, but just because someone's on vacation, there could be a parent who wants an answer. So there's going to be that backup for them. So I mean, your team's been working hard. They're entitled to their vacations, but we got to make sure that we're constantly in communication with parents, because there's going to be some nervous Nellies out there, including this guy.
Well, most importantly, David, I mean, there's a couple components to what you just said. Number one is, I think after I saw the news piece, that getting the communication out yesterday to parents and kicking off this fall school reopening task force was the most important. As we move forward, I have to tell you, I couldn't have a better team. These administrators around me, the principals, the folks, they have worked more hours, I think, than I've ever seen anyone work in a school system. So it's important that they take a break, but at the same time, when I talked about being nimble, we're moving pretty quickly with these groups getting together, being facilitated. The working group of teachers is the whole week of June 22nd rather than spreading it out, because we're going to need a lot of time to bring this forward and go ahead. And there will be folks around all summer. And now, heck, it almost feels like no one can actually go anywhere because you can just Google Hangout in, Google Meet in. But absolutely, we have a pretty good plan here in central office with the principals to do so.
Good. Thank you, Greg. Okay, that concludes the superintendent's report. Anything else there, Greg, on that? All set?
No, that's it for that.
Okay, quick chair's report before we get into the summer retreat meeting and dates. Just want to, first of all, give a shout to Team H, Holly and Helen, for winning last week and coming back for another 3 years. I think the five of us now have been together as a whole unit for 3 years now. I enjoy serving with all of you, and definitely my congratulations to Holly and Helen for such a resounding win. Obviously, town meeting's coming up on Tuesday. I'm going to post, so FYI, I'm going to post for a 4 o'clock school committee meeting just in case we have some business to take up. But town meeting starts at 5 o'clock, and we'll post for a 4 o'clock meeting. On that, I already said enough about the high school parade. And, okay, discussion of summer retreat meeting and dates. I have for our next non-town meeting scheduled meeting for June 25th. At that point, we'll have a reorganization of the board. We'll have a new chair and vice chair at that time. And we can bounce around dates right now, but I think a better idea maybe just to come to that June 25th meeting with some dates, because I think that summer retreat, Greg, usually, is a good 4-hour meeting that day, correct? Yeah. So why don't we just plan, instead of like bouncing off our calendars right now, why don't we come prepared on June 25th to bang out that date, if that's okay with the members? Any objection to that? Andrew?
I was just going to suggest maybe we could utilize like a Google poll or a doodle poll. I forget which version Bev has sent out in the past. Just if somebody has vacations plans, it might be easier to just knock that off in advance and come in and maybe have
Sure.
choose from.
Maybe, yeah, can we have, Bev, I'm sure you're listening, maybe put out a Google, Boodle poll, whatever it is?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would say about June, is it June 25th?
Yeah, not a good date?
No, it's fine. What time were you thinking, though?
Same bat time, same bat channel, 7 o'clock? No?
Okay. Sometimes we've met in the day and during that working session in the retreat. That said, that will work. That's the week of the Institute. I was going to say, Jim's helping facilitate and Lorene and, so if it's
Would
at
7
night, that's
o'clock
fine.
to work? I mean, I don't expect a lengthy agenda on the
Okay.
20th. It's after town meeting, so I think it's more for the reorganization of the board. It could be a quick meeting, okay?
Yeah, anything after 3 is fine.
Okay. And we can have Bev do a doodle poll?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that from the members?
Mr. Trissy, I do have one question. So do you only foresee us needing to have one retreat meeting over the summer, or given the circumstances, do you see a need for putting a few dates in place to discuss whatever?
I think I'd be respectful of the next chair to make that determination. I think it's definitely a possibility that we'd have multiple meetings over the summer. Obviously, we usually just meet once, but I'm ready to pass the torch to the next generation of leadership here.
I would suggest we make sure we Google Doodle poll multiple dates, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we come forward, we will want to come to school committee to have some discussions, and I know we'll need a member or two to possibly work on a couple MOAs with staff and working units and go from there.
How about myself and the vice chair talk about that, and maybe we can figure out how many dates you think we'll need, and maybe a couple times each month, and then have the retreat date being a longer date. But the point well taken.
Thank you.
Okay, back to new business. First reading, Educator Hall of Fame. Madam Vice Chair, you want to take this one?
I sure do. We had one nomination this year, and you all have the full packet of the nomination. Ray Grady was an AP history teacher at North Andover High School from 1971 to 2006. He taught generations of North Andover students and was exceedingly well recommended. In the nominating packet, you'll see that he was recognized, and the yearbook was dedicated to him over a number of different times. You'll see that one of the nominations came from our esteemed superintendent. And it's just really such a joy to read what folks have to say about the educators in North Andover. It does say on the nominating packet that he was not aware of the nomination, but our rules do require that a nominee be informed before it comes to the public. So I did have an opportunity to speak with him, and I would have loved to have taken his class in my 10 or 15-minute conversation that I had with him. It was just really a joy. So I thank you for the opportunity to do this, and I would be happy to answer any questions. We did have a nominating committee meeting, and it was unanimously recommended that we bring this candidate forward for the school committee to vote.
Okay. Any questions? Andrew, question for Helen on Mr. Grady?
Sounds like a great choice. Thank you, Helen.
Amy?
No questions. Thank you very much.
Holly?
I agree.
Okay, so that was the first reading, and on the 25th, we will vote officially. Is that okay, Helen?
That's perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, last order of business is first reading FY21 Memorandum of Agreement, and we will potentially suspend the rules to take this up. I don't know if we can, maybe Greg, you and I can both tee this up a little bit. We had a couple of public comments about it as well. So this agreement's kind of bounced around informally over the last few weeks between I think you and the town manager. I think we first received a copy a couple weeks ago of it. It didn't seem like it had much public discussion, as I think Mr. Duggan's comments mentioned earlier about it. I had some concerns about it, especially the context of it. I think the first memo, I wouldn't call it a MOA, but there was a memo put out by the finance director, making some definitive recommendation. Not even, I don't even call it a recommendation. I think she said that, if revenues need to come in, there would need to be some cuts on the school and municipal side. I've always felt that this revenue sharing, it's called the revenue sharing agreement, it's a policy decision by the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. I'm not sure that the town manager shares that opinion. But anyways, I think if you folks recall correctly, when we got this, I had said I was going to reach out to some FinCom members and then attend the FinCom meeting. I think it was the day after Memorial Day. Is that right, Jim? I think it was. Yeah. So back on May 26th. So the three of us, Greg, Jim, myself, the town manager was there as well. Discussed it a little bit. I shared a couple concerns about it. I reached out to a couple selectmen that week, and I'm talking to the chair, Chairman Valancourt, on that Thursday night. He was very generous with his time. I caught him at night. We talked for a little bit. I expressed some concerns about it. He quickly set up a meeting with the town manager, himself, me, and Greg the next morning. We went over the agreement again. Made some edits to it, and I think in your packet, I don't know, I have a real physical packet, so I'm not sure exactly what you're looking at, but there's a couple highlighted parts in our version of it, and
We have the same.
okay, good. Make sure. I'm not sure. I guess I'm pretty confident this is the version that the selectmen voted on. Is that your understanding, Greg? That they adopted these changes that myself and yeah.
As presented.
Okay. So as you can see, this was focused on, at first, just the decrease in revenue. I thought it was important that we highlighted that we definitely expected some significant increases in related costs due to COVID. So in the first two, paragraphs with the whereas paragraphs, the orange, the burnt sienna color, I would say, were some changes that were made to the agreement. Following on page 2, the town manager and the Chairman Valancourt agreed to this part about the COVID and the CARES Act. That was not originally in the first draft. I guess it was the first draft of it. So that was put in. So that made me feel better about the agreement. So now and there's a couple other changes to it. If you look on the first page under the agreement part, this part's in yellow, looks like highlight yellow, I would call it. We added some parts about adding the review of Dr. Mealing here, the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. The quarterly review analysis will be completed by the Finance Director, reviewed by the Revenue Fixed Cost Committee. So these are some changes probably from the last time you got the version of it. So those, are my interpretation of what's transpired. I've been in government politics for a long time. You can't always get what you want, but the times to compromise on things. I don't absolutely love this agreement, but I don't know if it's been publicly said, but I know definitely privately. I think the town manager did say at the FinCom meeting that night that she'd have a tough time recommending favorable action on the budget without us signing this agreement. I did not see the FinCom this week, so I don't know what they said, but I know they didn't vote on our budget this week. I know they are reserving judgment till this agreement gets signed. So I don't want to say there's the proverbial gun at our heads on this, but in some ways there is. But I want, we are a public body. We have to deliberate in public. I think I probably would have handled this situation a little bit differently, but I think this is the time for us to, dive in. If you have issues with the language, let's talk about it. If not, we can vote on it and move on, and hopefully that'll be enough for the FinCom to recommend favorably on our budget on Tuesday night. I don't know if Greg or Jim, you want to add any? Good, Greg?
Yeah, I would just say that, we worked really hard to get these positions where they are, and I think that, certainly there will be some special education costs that are up and need for special educators in terms of compensatory services and regression, as well as testing and IEP meetings, and facilitators to run the meetings. But at the end of the day, I feel that I'll be able to work with the town manager if we can get this passed. If we ever had any cuts that were coming, we'd work to do our best, to continue to fund the budget. But certainly, we're going to work really hard to, hire the folks we need to because it's by law or we need it for cost savings. And additionally, we've become experts, and I think we're good stewards of the town's money. I think Jim could probably speak to it. We've often done reorganizations within existing positions to better service our kids. And then, at the end of the day, I think that throwing in COVID-19, because, when we passed this budget, the world looked a lot different. So the reality is COVID-19 is here. Other than hiring folks that we need mandated by law, like an EL teacher or a special educator, we will do our best to, honor the agreement. With that said, I'm encouraged by working with the town manager, particularly around, we know there will be significant needs towards the CARES Act, the reimbursement towards the CARES Act, that will be able to help with that. Dr. Maley?
Yeah, along the same lines, I think it's important to keep this in perspective that we've been preparing it for this for 8 years. We've been, and it's kind of an unfair comparison to look at other communities and say, well, they're looking to cut their budgets and why aren't we? Well, we're not, because we've been very responsible for the last 8 years and in resisting the temptation to spend more than we should. And we've been building up our reserves, and now it allows us to deal with these rainy days or these tough situations as if it's business as usual and just to continue with our plan. And that's a result of being responsible, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you. Let's go to the members. Helen, you want to ask any questions? Have any comments?
Yeah, I first appreciate the work that the small group of folks that were working on this did. Both the Board of Selectmen, and I'm getting an echo, so it's very hard to very hard to think about what you're going to say when what you just said is coming back at you. But anyway, I appreciate the work of the folks that did this. There are some components of this that are going to require passing of the budget. It identifies a reserve fund that doesn't yet exist. And it identifies access of 10% of that reserve fund. So we have to anticipate that the budget's going to pass, in part supported by our commitment and agreement to continue to work together. North Andover's worked so well together for a good number of years now. And, some of us do remember when we weren't working so well together. So I do think it's important that we share an agreement. I think that's really important. But there are questions that I have that I don't think we'll probably be able to answer. So that that account that they identify that we can access 10% of, I don't know what the procedures are for the other 90% of that. And it's my understanding that that's a fund for a rainy day. And if it starts to rain, it would be good for us to know what that is. So, there's plans to put free cash to capital in the budget. So those are all things that will be decided by town meeting that are a little uncertain in the agreement right now. But I do think that it would be good for us to work together and to make a commitment to doing so in a formal way.
So just to add a little color to that, and Jim, can you help me here if I get this wrong, but the reserve account that's mentioned in the agreement, that's 10%, Helen referenced reducing 10% from the finance reserve account. That's a different account. That's not our stabilization account. That's not our free cash. That is a separate account for what purpose exactly?
I think it's, as Helen was saying, I think it's planned as a new account for them to deal with things that might come up. And be the ones who decide where those funds can best be used or are most needed. and I think it's 1.6 something
Yeah,
million.
she said it was, in our conversation, she said it was $1.6 million in that account. So,
Yep.
so they'll access 10% of that, $160,000 first. But that has nothing to do with our free cash position, as you mentioned. They're going to take some free cash for capital or our stabilization account, which I think is like 5.5 or $5.6 million. So that's a separate account together. Anything else, Helen? Andrew?
Thank you. You may have said this and I may have missed it, so I do apologize. The Board of Selectmen voted on this on Monday night. What was the vote?
It was a week ago. It was a week ago Monday. It was right before the election. It was a 5-0 vote.
5-0, okay. You know, I think that we have to be really mindful of the partnership that we have with the town. And I think that this really helps to extend that. But I think that the schools are in a difficult position and we have a different challenge. Once the school year starts, excuse me, once the school year starts, our ability to change staffing really becomes obsolete. You know, we've got students in classes, we've got, you know, teachers that are there, you know, so we have to be very mindful, you know, as we're moving forward and, you know, filling the positions that, you know, we are looking to plan to do as we kind of move forward with that. So, I mean, I'm in favor of this, but at the same time, you know, I'm going to challenge us to, again, just be really cautious, you know, about making sure that we're making the ultimate best decisions that we can with those positions and things that are changing that may supersede the budget process that we went through. My God, it feels like a lifetime ago, but 4 months ago. So, you know, we may need to just revisit some of those, and that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Andrew. Amy?
Yes, so thank you. I would agree with what my colleagues have said so far. I also just want to comment on, so after the first yellow section is where they kind of lay out the order of, you know, ways in which we would accommodate any kind of budget shortfall. So there, and the fact that lastly, it's, you know, in our budget is what it looks like to me. And I appreciate that that's been put last in this agreement. That really shows, as everybody has said, a partnership of trying to, you know, squeeze every place we can before we have to go to those types of cuts and things. But I also share the concern that since we don't know what's coming, you know, and I guess this agreement covers that, we might come back to say, you know, we can't cut you all. We're going to need even more than we already are asking for. So, and I think that hopefully that this agreement takes that into account, and that's the spirit of it, that it's going to have to be a partnership to resolve whatever we end up facing.
Point well taken, Amy. I think, you know, it does outline 4 different steps before they get to cutting the budget. The only thing that really has any definitives to us is reducing 10% of the finance reserve account. The second is reducing operating capital. The third, making any possible reductions from shared services. Fourth, making any possible reductions in health insurance. And then finally going to the different budgets on a allocated basis. So I think, you know, that part, the ambiguity gives me pause as well, but I definitely feel strong that we have 2 strong people who are sitting right in front of me that are going to advocate for us in those kind of negotiations. And I know Jim also sits on the Revenue Fixed Cost Committee as well. So I think, you know, if we go down this path, we're well covered with Jim's expertise and experience advocating for the schools. Holly?
Yeah, I agree with everything already said, and especially Amy's point. I talked with the town manager, and she was quite confident that it's not going to get to step 5. She doesn't even think we'll have to implement any of the steps next year. So that gave me some comfort, and I think this will allow us to adhere to our strategic plan and continue to do what we've been trying to do so far. So I support it.
We're going to have that consistent message, hopefully, on Tuesday night as well. Okay, any other comments? I think we're all set. As you know, we need to get this done prior to Tuesday. If the members would indulge me, could we have a motion to suspend the rules so we can vote on this tonight?
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion to suspend the rules by Amy, and that was seconded by Andrew, so we could take it up tonight to vote. Any further discussion on suspension of the rules? Hearing none. Helen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Holly, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So 5-0 to suspend the rules. Okay, now on the substantive matter, to approve the MOA as presented in the packet. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Was that Helen? Helen and Holly?
Yep.
Yep.
We had AA first, and I have HH next. Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the MOA as presented in the packet? Hearing none. Helen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Holly?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that's a 5-0 vote. Okay, so we have passed the MOA as presented in the packet. Hopefully the FinCom will take up our budget prior to town meeting and give us the favorable recommendation that we all expect. And quite frankly, our kids deserve. That's it for the agenda. Public comment from the board. Helen, you have anything you want to add? Nope, you're muted.
Yes, I do. I just can't get to unmute. I just wanted to mention, it came to my attention today that our local Race Amity Day had to be postponed until some point where we can gather. But they are promoting participation in the National Race Amity Day, and there is a link to that was shared, at least with me. So I hope and I expect that Laureen and others will make sure that gets out on Twitter and on our website and all that other stuff. So I'd encourage folks to participate in Race Amity Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Andrew?
I would just say I'm almost in disbelief that this school year is over because it's just been so strange for the past couple of months. But I really want to thank the students for kind of adjusting and adapting to remote learning. The faculty and staff, as a teacher, you didn't sign up to kind of sit in front of a computer and kind of do that. And I think that there's a lot of challenges, and I think that there was a lot of hard work done behind the scenes to help to modify that learning and to try to put it forward as best as possible. And so, I really want to thank both sides, the students and the teaching staff for kind of helping to do that. And, certainly Lorene and Marcy and, the rest of the administration team for championing through that. And really, not the graduation that they wanted, but for the class of 2020, thank you for all of your patience. And it was amazing to be there. As different as it was very special. And I think every family that came through, was just incredibly gracious and supportive and thankful for the opportunity to celebrate the class of 2020. And then, with the town being supportive of the students on the car parade, it was just fantastic. So I'm always impressed of my new hometown and how we come together in times like this and really celebrate what's important. So thank you, and congratulations again to Holly and Helen.
Here, well said, Andrew. Amy?
I totally agree with what Mr. McDevitt already covered. And as a parent of a senior, I did hear from a lot of families and students who, as we all acknowledged, it was not what we expected, but people were made to feel super special in unique ways. And so we are thankful for that and congratulate the kids for their perseverance and grit. And also, Greg did this earlier, but I can't thank enough the administration, particularly at the high school, the staff. There were so many people who volunteered and came and greeted each family when they came into this weird graduation filming. And I had a lot of people tell me that just at the door when they were greeted, they felt really respected and valued and acknowledged the strange times. The class advisors, Lauren McDonald and Derville Bentley, were incredible. The class officers that we've mentioned in the past, just wonderful, and the students. But I also really want to reiterate the thanks to North Andover CAM for all the work that they did through all the televised events, including Memorial Day, including what's coming for the planning of town meeting. You know, just incredible work that they put out there. And also the photographer from Mark Lawrence, who a great deal of energy. He was there. There's a reason why he weighs 5 pounds. He worked constantly, keeping up a positive attitude and energizing the families and trying to make them feel special and celebrated. So I know he will never hear this, but he was an amazing individual to be part of this as well. So I'm thankful to everyone for that. And for all, as Andrew said, for all the kids and teachers who did things differently in the last few months. So thank you.
And thank you, Amy, too. Holly?
Yeah, Amy took a lot of what I was going to say. I know, David, you already thanked her, but Amy did a tremendous amount of work with the graduation, scheduling our slots and being there almost, I would say 90% of the time. And it was really well run, really well done. And I think Cam did a beautiful job of putting it all together. It was a great graduation ceremony on film, and it looked seamless, actually. Even though people came at all different times, you didn't get that sense when you watched it Friday night. So I just want to congratulate all the seniors, congratulate all the 8th graders moving up to 9th grade, all the 5th graders moving up to 6th grade, and all the students for sticking with the remote learning and making the best of it. So
Thank you, Holly. Well said. Well said as well. Okay, I think that wraps up a long meeting. I appreciate everyone's patience and participation tonight. I thought it was a very good meeting.
Chair Parisi?
Yes.
Can
Vice
I add
Chair.
one thing?
Absolutely.
Just a big kudos to Trudy Reed, our new town clerk, who ran the recent election. There was so many complications that she managed, and we really had a relatively good turnout. So I just wanted to send a thank you to her and everybody who turned out to vote.
Good point. Good point. Thank you, Trudy. Hearing no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Motion by Ms. Picard,
So moved.
seconded by Mr. McDevitt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Helen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Holly?
yes.
And David votes yes as well. We are now adjourned.